December 30th, 1947. In the Elisabeta Palace in Bucharest, a young king waits. Mihai I is 26 years old. Beside him sits his mother, Queen Helen. In front of him lies a single sheet of paper. No law, no speech, no royal decree, but his own ending. Outside, Romania is no longer the country he knew. Ministers have disappeared. Parties have been shut down. Across from him sits Prime Minister Petru Groza. He speaks calmly, almost politely. He calls it a mutual divorce between king and people. Mihai demands that the people decide for themselves. Groza refuses. Then his tone shifts. Otherwise, he says, 1,000 arrested students will pay the price. No negotiation. No time to think it over. Now, Mihai is to abdicate. Romania's last king is to stop being king. A king can stand in his own palace and still have no way out. But why did this particular young man have to disappear? Why was a king with no real power suddenly so dangerous? The answer lies 3 years back. August 23rd, 1944. Bucharest again. The palace again. But this time, Mihai isn't the man being handed a paper. This time, he's the man who acts. At 5, he took the throne for the first time. His own father had already given it up for a mistress abroad. His mother, Helen, raised him alone with no political power. In 1930, the father returned and took the crown back from him. He rules for 10 years himself, until he's forced to abdicate again in 1940. In 1940, Mihai sits on the throne for the second time, this time as an ornament beside a dictator. Romania is exhausted. The front is closing in. The people already know more than the official speeches. Marshal Ion Antonescu stands in the palace, the strong man of the country, the man who has been deciding, the man almost no one openly challenges. Mihai is 22, too young to show fear, too old to keep pretending everything goes on as before. He calls on Antonescu to change course. Antonescu hesitates. He wants time. He wants to negotiate. He won't back down to a young king. But Mihai has no time left. Then comes the moment that will change his entire future. The king has Antonescu detained. He's locked in a room on the upper floor of the palace, the same room where his own father once kept his stamp collection. Romania breaks with the old course. The country switches sides. For one brief moment, it looks as though Mihai has led Romania out of the trap. But that very moment is exactly what makes him dangerous later. Because a king who has once proven he can act is no longer just an ornament. After 1944, Mihai stays on the throne. But the throne grows narrower. Every month, every week, every day. New men sit in the ministries. New words hang over old doors. Government, the people's will. Reorganization, progress. The monarchy still stands. But it stands like a house whose keys now belong to others. Mihai wears his uniform. He receives guests. He signs papers. He appears in photos as king. But behind the cameras, someone decides how much longer this image is still useful. That's the most dangerous moment for a crown, not the open fall, but the time before it, when everyone still salutes, when everyone still smiles, when the king still lives in the palace, but no one is waiting for him anymore. Then comes December 30th, 1947. The decision has been prepared. Romania is to become a republic. Not someday. Today. Groza presents him the decree. Sign it. Or 1,000 students pay the price. He isn't only looking at his own life. He's looking at a country that has been trapped between foreign interests for too long. He signs. That same day, the monarchy is abolished. A kingdom that lasted decades is over within hours. Mihai loses more than the crown. He loses the place where his life had meaning. A few days later, he leaves Romania on a specially provided train. Not like a ruler on a journey, but like a man being pushed out of history. Yet, he hasn't disappeared. In 1948, Mihai marries Anne of Bourbon-Parma. In the photographs, they look young, elegant, almost like the start of a fairy tale. But this fairy tale no longer has a castle that belongs to them. No court, no capital, no country waiting for them. Only a name heavier than their everyday life. They have 5 daughters: Margarita, Elena, Irina, Sophie, Maria. The king becomes a father in exile. He starts a small market garden in England. Later, he works for an American aircraft company. Then the family moves to Geneva. There, Mihai starts an electronics company and works for a time as a stockbroker. No throne, no ministers, no audiences, just a former king who gets up every morning and has to live an ordinary life. But it's never ordinary, because his name stays bigger than any room he lives in. In Romania, a new story is being told by now. A story without a king. Mihai is supposed to be the past. A leftover. A mistake from an old world. But some names don't disappear just because no one says them anymore. 1989 brings down the old system. Suddenly, a door opens that had been shut for decades. And a question is immediately in the air. What happens if the exiled king comes back? In 1990, Mihai tries to travel to Romania. He doesn't get far. He has to leave again. The country is free of the old dictatorship, but not free of its fear of this one name. Because Mihai doesn't come with an army, not with a government program, not with a claim to the palace. He comes as a symbol. And a symbol can be more dangerous than an opponent. In 1992, he's allowed to return for Easter. Over 1 million people flood into the streets of Bucharest. Many never saw him rule. Others only know the stories. But they come anyway. And at the same time, they see something that had been taken from them for a long time. Mihai steps in front of the crowd. No crown, no throne, no power. Just a man who had to leave in 1947. And a country that suddenly recognizes him again. For the government, this reception is a shock. President Ion Iliescu bans him from re-entering the country that same year, because it shows what no one can control. You can abolish a monarchy. You can send a king into exile. You can have papers signed, but you can't decide what people remember. Mihai doesn't become king again. Romania stays a republic. Only 5 years later, does Iliescu's successor, Emil Constantinescu, give him back his citizenship. But the door no longer stays fully closed. In 2001, Mihai gets back the right to live in the Elisabeta Palace. The same palace he was sent away from in 1947. He's allowed to be visible again. Not as a ruler, but as the last witness of a world that had been cut off. The men of 1947 had taken his throne from him. They had sent him away. They had believed the story was over. But decades later, Mihai stands in Romania again. Not young, not powerful, not crowned, only as a memory now. And that's enough. The crown is gone. The king is still there,